Today on Brit in Poland, we are going to Karpacz. This is a lovely little mountain town in the south of Poland. So I hope you enjoy this video. Plenty to show you, plenty to amaze you. Welcome back. So basically me and my now ex-girlfriend decided to go to the mountains, and we were trying to look for somewhere where we could easily access. So we went to a place called Karpacz, and this is part of the Karpacz mountains in the south of Poland, and I didn't know what to expect. A couple of weeks before, we'd been to Zakopane and to the Tatras, so it's like, okay, let's try somewhere different. So we went and had a look, and we were quite impressed, actually. So to tell you a little bit about Karpacz, so there are quite a few different little sort of towns and things nearby. But I'd say this is the main one to go to in the region to get to the mountains and really explore. The site itself kind of dates back to about the 12th century, and actually one of the reasons why people began flocking to this site was because there be gold in them mountains. So it was actually kind of a little gold rush phase, and so all the miners and prospectors were heading down there. And for many years, it pretty much just stayed as this like prospecting town. And you can even, like when you're going up the mountains now, you can see within the rocks glisten, and you're like, valuable. And then basically, okay, so the site itself didn't really get the name Karpacz, or at least wasn't recognized as Karpacz until the 14th century, where it appeared in the Volunia, which is a sort of an important book at the time, from what I understand. They expanded the site and began silver and lead mining in the sort of 15th and 16th centuries. And then there was a bit of a weird turn. The place kind of turned a bit hippie-ish, and so it became a centre for folk medicines, so herbal remedies, and so you had a lot of herbalists living there, going up into the mountains to pick these rare herbs for their concoctions. So, pretty cool, makes me think of The Witcher whenever I hear something like that. And then it wasn't until the sort of 19th century where the site was exploited as a tourist site. So, suddenly you're getting like skiing being promoted, hiking trails, mountain trails. A lot of this began popping up, and it became a lot more populated. I would say it's probably not the most popular place in Poland. I hadn't really heard of it before I went, but I'm glad I did. So we ended up taking a Flixbus to get down there. They operated a route, I think it was something like 9 hours and about maybe 13-14 euros sort of thing to get down there, so not too bad. The journey was pretty straightforward, and yeah, so we got down there, and there are 2 Flixbus stops. One in kind of the main centre and then one a bit further. We missed the one in the main centre, and we went to the further one, and then we ended up with maybe about an hour's hike with our backpacks to get to our accommodation, which was not smart. And one thing to know about Karpacz is you probably want to be quite fit if you go there. It's very hilly. The city itself is not the easiest to walk through, so be steady on your legs. Hopefully don't carry too much. But we made it, and it was a lovely place. I mean, the city itself, on a day-to-day level, you have quite a few nice bars, a few nice restaurants, a lot of lovely parks. There was this one park we went to which had all these like weird kind of animal statues, so quite modern sculpture, but also lots of little parks dotted around with kind of, I don't know, like almost a Japanese style garden feel, lots of sort of bonsai type things, and you know, monuments. I mean, one thing that struck me about this place is instantly you feel there's a lot of history there, there's a lot of culture there, and this is what really made it stand out. So I have to admit, yeah, I fell in love with the place compared to Zakopane very, very quickly. And there's also quite a few sites to see. You know, you have a number of churches, of course, everywhere in Poland has churches. But this one actually has a very specific church called the Wang Church. Now it's very specific because firstly, it's quite a hike to get there. It's close to one of the trails going into the mountains. I'll tell you a little bit more about those shortly. And it's quite a way uphill, so it's a bit of a journey to get there, but well worth it. Now, what makes this church kind of unique is it's actually Norwegian. It was built in a place called Vang, I believe, in Norway. And the King of Prussia, this was in around 1842, was originally going to build this in Berlin. So they were literally transporting the church or temple brick by brick, and they were going to rebuild it in Berlin. But then they decided, you know what, Karpacz doesn't have a church, and we're sending quite a few clerics that way, so maybe it would be a good idea to send this church to there. So they took it there, they reconstructed it, but they found actually that only about 15% of the original materials could be used to reconstruct this. So they were like, okay, they added an extra tower, and the rest they were just like looking at these drawings that they had, and it's like, okay, it looks like this. And it's actually, you know, quite a nice place to see. And like on the way up, there's meant to be a weird gravitational anomaly where gravity actually only operates at a kind of a lower rate, or things are said to roll uphill or whatever. Other places say it's an optical illusion. Kind of cool. I didn't see any evidence of that myself. I just felt the gravity immensely as we were doing all the walking. But other things to see, there are, you know, a number of museums. There's like a Lego museum there, bizarrely. But actually, the museum I would recommend in particular is the Mysteries of Karpacz. And okay, so I went there alone, and I'm kind of glad I did. It's a little bit kiddie in the way that they presented it, but it's very interesting. If you're interested in mythology or history, you go in there and you can see all of these legends about the mountain spirit, and the way that the original settlers encountered this, and there are a lot of stories and a few interactive exhibits. And for you English people like myself, they gave me a tablet, which basically I could read instead of having to read the inscriptions, so I could follow what was going on. You know, and I spent maybe a good hour there. It was about 20 zloty, and you know, it's just nice to have a bit of colour and a bit of culture. The thing to note is a lot of the mythology from this place actually isn't just Polish. It's a mixture of like Polish, German, a bit of Norwegian, so it has a lot of colour to it, a lot of flavour to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if it did inspire some of the stuff in The Witcher. but it was very interesting because I haven't really seen much of the kind of ancient Polish stories, so that was really worth a while. So other sites in and around the city. Let me just check my list here. So there's a lovely dam that they built on the Sněžka river, and it provides a nice little reservoir, and it's just a nice little scenic spot. And it's kind of along one of the trails, the Red Trail, so it's quite worth a visit, I would say. You've got Raven Rocks. Now, Raven Rocks is like a big, massive sort of stone, about 25 meters high kind of stone edifice, which is actually used by professional climbers. There are a lot of like little hooks and things in there. So again, that was another thing. There's this wonderful waterfall. They call it the Wild Waterfall, which was actually formed by the building of the dam, and apparently there could be flooding and things like that as a result. But again, very bizarre. Okay, so what is... yes, there was like a mineral museum. I didn't take any footage of the inside for some reason, but it was cool. It was cool. It's free to wander around. There's a little shop where you can buy like jewelry and little, minerals. You have all kinds of wonderful things to see in there. So it's definitely worth stopping by. Before I go further, I will just point out, with any place you're going to, it is always worth going to the tourist office, because when I went there, they gave me a lovely map. I had two maps. So one was a map of the city, and on the back were loads of sites to see, and that was in English. And then they also gave me a map of the trails, because we were very interested in going up the mountains. Okay, so what are some of the other things to see? Yes, you have the Explorer Footprints Square. And here, you actually have these kind of, on the ground, you have like the imprints in bronze of some of Poland's most famous explorers. And the thing to note is Polish climbers were actually some of the best in the world, especially in the 70s and the 80s. They were hitting peaks way, ahead of other countries. They were setting all kinds of records, so this, these footprints will commemorate people such as Andrzej Zawada, Wanda Rutiewicz. Apologies to them if I bastardise their names. This is what I do in this country, and annoy people at the same time. But yeah, definitely the city itself, it's fun to walk around, and lots of hidden little sites, lots of history, lots of culture, so definitely worth it. But probably, rather than the city or town, whatever the reason that you'd be coming to Karpacz will be for the mountains. Now, you actually have a few to choose from, and so on 2 different days we hit 2 different peaks, and the trails are actually not that bad. I remember the first trail, so we were going here to Szkolny Stół, which is not the highest peak. I think it's like one of the second highest peaks or whatever. But it took us probably about 4 hours or so to get to the peak. Could be quite steep in places, but it wasn't actually that bad. Lovely scenery, as you'd expect along the whole journey. Quite a magical place, and you get to the top, and actually when you get to the top there's like a little signpost to tell you that you've just entered the Czech Republic, or Czechia, because you've basically crossed a border. Luckily we didn't have any border guards waiting for us up there to cause us any problems, but you can get to the top and then sort of walk along the peaks. And then we found ourselves in a nice, kind of rocky peak, which again, in places it's a little bit steep to walk uphill, but ultimately it was quite an easy journey. And we had the option of going multiple trails, so we ended up taking a different trail on the way down than the one we came up on. And yeah, lovely. And then the second mountain we went to is the one that's more famous in Karpacz, and that's Sněžka. Now, one of the reasons this place is famous is because of the UFO sightings. Now, you may be a bit like, what? Okay, so at the top of this mountain, you've actually got a massive observatory, and it kind of looks like a UFO or 3 UFOs stacked on top of each other. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we took the, I believe it was the Green Trail, which was, some pretty, steep steps that were going up, quite a long journey. And it was fairly taxing. It wasn't the easiest of the trails we could have taken. The easiest of the trails are probably if you go up to the Vang Church, because there are some trails leading from there which are a bit more level. They're not very taxing. You probably exert more effort getting to the beginning of the trail than you do on the trail itself. But everything links up. And eventually we got, to this lake, which is, the area that trail is most famous for. And there was a, like a hostel or lodge, by the trail. Now, sadly, it was sort of closed, but luckily they had a little counter open where we could, buy some beer. It's always important to have beer on the trail. It's good for the muscles. Remember this, and please don't dispute me, because I swear by this fact. And then after this shelter, we took, again, carried along the path, and got a little bit steeper as we're getting higher up the mountain, and we ended up at another lodge. But we didn't stop this time because we wanted to plow on, and we went in kind of October, so the sun is going down quite early, so you have to make the most of these trips. So we carry on past that, and then there's this quite long trail that takes you to pretty much like the not the peak, but like the top, the ridge of the mountain. And then you follow that for a bit to get to a third lodge. And again, we didn't stop here because we weren't at the end and we were conscious of time. Now, the actual peak of Sněžka was an absolute, you looked at it and you're like, oh my God. But it's not so bad. Okay, so when you get to the peak, you have the choice of 2 different paths. One path is really steep and horrible, but takes you up quicker. Or you have the longer, more steady path, which goes around. Guess which one we took? So we went up the really steep path, had to stop a few times just to let the legs recover and the breath recover. There are a few lookout points as you go. And then when you get to the top, that's where you're greeted with the observatory. There was a lot of snow up there, and there was like an old church as well. So again, something nice, and you're sort of technically crossing the border again. Sadly, the observatory normally has a restaurant, but I believe that's been closed since 2015. And they have been having some structural problems with the building, so I don't know exactly when that will reopen. Certainly not in 2020. Maybe next year. We will see. We took the easy path back because, well, I think we were just like getting a bit. We've done enough of the hard graft, and we took a different route to get back, something that was a little bit more direct to the city. So we followed the red trail back, and this one was actually quite steep and a little bit treacherous in places, but it was ultimately a lot of fun to go down. Perhaps the less fun part was when we got to kind of a memorial for a lot of the people that had died on the mountain, because that's the thing with any mountain, it's never entirely safe. There are going to be accidents, there are going to be bad weather conditions. So it's always a good idea to have the right footwear. We had some Nordic walking poles, which made the whole thing a lot easier on the legs and certainly on the knees. And also make sure you've dressed the part that you've got. Some thermal active gear is always preferential because it can get pretty cold when you get to the top. But of course, if you've been up to any mountains or even read about mountains, then you should know all this already. But just some practical tips from me. Let me think. Is there anything that I missed out? So, sorry, there are a few other museums that I sadly didn't get to go to. So there's an old toy museum, which documents toys from the last 200 years. There's some sports and recreation museums because of course the area has got a lot of skiing and is rather famous for that. So you had a lot of very famous Polish skiers and things based around here or competed there. So yeah, totally. And just checking my notes, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. It is. So by no means I've probably missed a few key points out. I know there was like this Lover's Mill, which has some kind of medieval romantic story with some knight or something, which sadly I missed. But really, Karpacz, I would recommend fully. It's a great place to get into the mountains. There are lots of trails there. The city itself is lovely. The locals were very friendly. Technically, and I hope I'm not getting anyone in trouble, but halfway through our trip, the Polish government basically said that they're closing all restaurants and bars, but we did find a couple of places that would let us drink outside, even sit down and eat outside, which was very, very nice of them. And they were very chatty and very, very good to us as well. But honestly, I really love this place. I highly recommend you factor it in. One issue we had, but I'm sure you won't have this, is sadly the Flixbus that we used to get there in the first place stopped running halfway through our trip, and we were like, so we had to take a bus to I think Jelenia Góra, which is kind of the big center city of the region, and then from there we had to get a train back to Warsaw, so a bit of a hiccup. But they're fairly regular buses between the two cities, so it shouldn't be an issue. But thank you very much for watching. I appreciate that my videos are perhaps longer than some of the ones on the internet, but I always like to be thorough and to tell you as much about a place as I can. More to come, certainly a lot more places in Poland I've been to that I will be documenting over time. I'm just covering some of my favorites first. Nah, that's not true. I've got some good ones to come. So please, if you like this video, subscribe, because there will be more coming. And also, please like. The more likes people give to the video, the more it appears in YouTube search results and the more I'm discovered. And, okay, so maybe I'm being a bit vain, but like, it's always nice to get views. It's always nice to know that the work I'm doing is appreciated. So thank you, my loyal fans, and thank you for anyone who's taken the time to watch this. I will be back with you soon. Take care, stay safe.